Thank you for coming. It's been a long day for us, but we still have very, very exciting lineup coming up. So really excited to have everyone here. This panel is probably a dream for me to do for a while because I've been always experimenting kind of how to increase my performance, how to be better. And I've always wanted to ask these questions that I have upcoming for these leaders in their industries here. So it's really, honestly, an excuse for me to kind of pick their brains on something that I'm really passionate about. So I'm just going to do a 1-minute intro about each person. If you'd like to go. Niko, you can start.
Sure. Exciting to be here, so thank you for inviting me. I'm Niko Bonatsos. I'm a managing director at General Catalyst. We're a multi-stage VC firm, and we're in the business of partnering with ridiculously ambitious founders. We don't care how they look like, where they went to school, what they did before. All we care about is their ability to learn really quickly and hopefully have what it takes to scale and build the leading company in their space.
Hi, everyone. Well, firstly, wanted to thank Ahmad for having me here. Thank you. I am Shubham. I'm the founder of Affinity. Affinity is a relationship intelligence platform, and we help organizations and individuals get more value from their networks. So tons of organizations are very relationship-driven, and we want to help them better leverage and harness their network in order to find the next introduction, find their next big deal, et cetera. So that's what we're up to. Thank you again for having me here.
Of course.
Hey everybody, my name is Rahul. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Superhuman, where we make the fastest email experience in the world. Our customers get through their inbox about twice as fast as before, and many of them see inbox zero for the first time in years. And thank you for having me.
So the interesting thing is I'm actually a customer of both companies, Affinity and Superhuman, and both of them have been increasing my productivity a lot, but in different areas. And Niko has been, someone who's been fueling kind of companies like this and investing in companies like this. So it's gonna be interesting having a perspective of founders that are building scale-ups, that are growing really, really fast. I think, Rahul, you have how many people on your wait list right now?
Currently, the wait list is about 270,000 people.
So that's a big number. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you have almost a third of all VCs in the States using Affinity?
And the EU, yep.
And EU.
Yep.
It's a big market. And Niko, if I'm not mistaken, 7 billion under management now?
It's a little bit over 5 for the time being.
A bit over 5, okay. So it's a good number. So from a VC perspective and a founder perspective, at what points did you feel like you need to kind of get into a new high gear of mental toughness, increase your mental productivity? And what did you do about it once you kind of noticed, I need to start improving my mental performance? Niko, if you want, we can start with you.
Sure. So one of the benefits of aging is you start getting to know yourself a little bit better. So it's like a journey to self-awareness, same like investing. In the very beginning, I think you don't realize that there's stuff in the background that you're accumulating, that your body's sending you warning signs. You don't realize that. But as you talk to other smart people around you, you compare notes on their own productivity hacks, and maybe you're at the risk of a burnout, you start taking action. So for me, what happened was that I was using Uber too much, which was a great productivity hack because I could do a lot more email before Superhuman was invented. And as a result, I was spending a lot more time being hunched over my tiny screen. And at the young age of 30, I started having serious upper back problems. So this was clearly a warning sign, and I had to take action. And so for me, ever since, it's been a combination of like being religious about working out, freeing up time to be able to think about stuff more than anything else, and then also making sure that I take care of my body. Maybe I stop here for now. This is a lot talking about themselves.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Just to riff off of that, funnily enough, I'm actually having upper back problems right now. So Hunching is not good for you. And just starting to have those epiphanies. One of the things that comes to mind as I think about the journey we've had at Affinity is, I think, one of the biggest challenges you face as a founder is uncertainty. It's less so even about the work and the exact steps you need to take to accomplish a certain task, but the uncertainty around whether the things that keep you up at night, right? Like whether this is truly a product that is, people will buy, we can get them engaged, etc. So dealing with that for the first time, which was a year into building the company, I would say probably pre-product market fit, that's, I think, was one of the most challenging moments in my time building the company. And so there's a couple of things. The first is I learned, don't let that just grow inside of you, find people to talk about it with. So I obviously I had my co-founder, but I found a great executive coach who has been super, super helpful in actually making me more productive by helping me think clearly. And then I cannot emphasize how important it is to work out or find something that is not related to your, 80% of your life that you spend working, that you need to get behind and set goals around. So for me, that was actually weightlifting, and got really into that, and that was helpful. So those two things come to mind.
And Rahul?
Fortunately, my upper back is fine, but my lower back is a different story. I think the only lesson there is if you're going to try and set deadlift records, never break form. So, Shubham mentioned product market fit, and I think that's actually a very pivotal moment. And I have a somewhat contrarian view on this. I think prior to product market fit, prior to the time when you have high confidence that you've built something that people like and will scale, productivity is actually not the thing to aim for. Efficiency is not that helpful. What matters in those early years is creativity, it's insights. Building the right thing turns out to be way more important than building the thing right. And so my advice would be not to stress out about eking out that extra half an hour or that extra hour. It probably actually doesn't really matter. What matters is building the right product. But once you have found product market fit and you have a thing that is scaling in a market that people love, every second of every day becomes super valuable. And what will happen is your time will suddenly vanish, and people will start asking for every available slot in your calendar. You'll have to guard that. And your responsibility, if you're a CEO, becomes to scale yourself out of every single job as rapidly as possible. And that means hiring functional experts and delegating as much of what you do every single day to them. So there is this huge transition that happens, and most founders, myself included, having been through that twice, completely miss that transition when it's happening. So it's probably worth asking yourself every single day, should I be acting before or after? Should I be optimizing for creativity and insight, or for execution and delegation?
Yeah, I remember you mentioned before you found product market fit and launched the company at this scale, you had a lot of time for yourself to think and strategize and just kind of ponder what you're doing. Now, once you're in that growth mode, do you still have that time to kind of just sit and think, or is execution all the time?
I get very little of that time, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So starting half a year ago, I made a change to my calendar. So every quarter, I now have 1 week where I'm working from home, and no meetings are allowed to be scheduled. If a candidate needs to be closed, they can be closed the week after. And the following week, I'm actually legitimately on vacation, which is quite a lot of vacation for a CEO to take, especially sort of in the American work culture. But I grew up in England, and so I'm going to continue to live that way. I think it's quite healthy for my brain. So these changes, I think, are going to give me the room to act strategically. And there's a third phase, by the way, which I didn't really talk about because I'm not there yet. But once you've hired your full executive team and you've managed to delegate all of the day-to-day and tactics of running the company, then I think the right thing to do is to revert as much as possible back to phase one, because the responsibility of the CEO becomes, okay, let's find the next inflection. Let's find the next piece of product market fit. And sometimes those are very, very contrarian decisions that only the CEO can take. A classic example from the early days of Facebook would be the shift from profiles to the newsfeed. Essentially, no one in Facebook except for Mark wanted that to happen, and they were all trying to talk him out of it. But because of the clarity of mind he was able to create for himself at that time, he made that decision, and it was one of the most pivotal decisions in the entire history of the company.
Amazing. So the next question kind of also, loops into the first. And it was a question actually that a friend really wanted to ask you guys. And it was, do you have any sacred routines that you have every day that you will not give away for any reason? I know we talked about it a little, but it was a really interesting and personal, small tweaks in your life that make sure it makes you happy and a peak performance. Niko, if you want, you can take a stab at that.
Sure. It's not something that's set in stone. Life goes by, it's dynamic, there are new circumstances. But for me, where I am now, like sleeping for like 7 hours and 15 minutes is what my body wants. I tried all the different trackers out there, and they confirmed what intuitively, I thought was right. Secondly, every day in the morning, I try to work out so that I don't have the upper back problems. But most importantly, I'm not glued in front of my iPhone screen because I'm a person who's addicted to information. Like every new SMS, email that comes through, push notification, it's like a slot machine. Who knows? Maybe the next Mark Zuckerberg is going to email me, and hopefully it's a woman this time, right? So having like an hour to work out and just focus on the weightlifting that you were talking about, where I don't have to worry about what's going on with the portfolio companies, because when you have portfolio of companies, okay, you're not dealing with the founders' direct problems, but every day there is something going on. Like you would hear from portfolio company that, my co-founder hates me, the CTO is going to quit, somebody's sleeping with somebody else, the journal is going to write an article, can you shut it down? So there's a lot of drama going on, and you got to be there. So during the time that I work out, I don't have to think about it. Meditation hasn't really worked out well for me yet, but certain people say that this is particularly helpful. Maybe last thing to mention is every day in the morning, I write down 3 things that I want to accomplish during the day. And that's something that I picked up from Ron Conway, who is a very notable investor here in the Valley. And every day, he has been doing this for a long time. I figured if it worked out for Ron, maybe, it could work out, well for me.
And do you feel did it work out?
So far, so good. No complaints, yeah.
All right, we'll try. Shubham?
I have a very similar take as, this is pre-back pain stuff, though. So, it's like last month has been tough. But I actually wake up, and one of the things I used to do, so I wake up at the sort of same time every day, and I try to just commit to that. And one of the things I used to do was as soon as I woke up, I used to look at my phone and like email, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm delayed by my workout for like 30 minutes. Now, does it even make sense to go to the gym? Like, probably not. Let's just move on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I started doing was I'm not going to look at my phone until I'm back from the gym. So I wake up and I just sort of go to the gym right away, and that is the first, hour and a half of my day. And then I come back, and it's really hard when I first started doing this. And then I come back, I get ready, and then at 7-ish, I will pick up my phone and be like, okay, what's happening in the world? So that's one thing that has just allowed me to be sane, I think. And then the second thing I will say is, I don't do this every day, but I try to do this a few times a week. Is I've started maintaining a diary, but it's not like I would write paragraphs and paragraphs of here's what happened today and it's all great or really bad, but I try to write a few bullets. So I'll write 1 or 2 things that I'm actually grateful for that happened today, and something that just didn't go so well and I need to get better at. And that really helps, because I think, going to bed thinking that at least there were 1 or 2 things that went right today is just a good feeling. So those are the 2 things that I'd say.
And
wow, I feel way less organized by comparison. I go to bed at random times and wake up arbitrarily. And one of the, no, really, and actually the biggest life change was not setting an alarm, and I wake up when I wake up, and it'll all be fine.
There are many paths to success, so that's great news, right?
I mean,
You choose your own adventure, guys.
exactly. It seems to be working.
I think that's a habit that I'm gonna pick.
Yeah, I'm way more relaxed now. What are we talking about? Oh yeah, so routines. So one thing that I do fairly religiously is every single evening before I go to sleep, I watch about 20 to 30 minutes of comedy. Sometimes it's stand-up comedy, sometimes it's a sketch show. Really, it doesn't really matter what it is, but the point in my mind is to laugh, because no matter how stressful the day's been, and of course in this line of work, the days can get incredibly stressful, no matter how stressful they are, it's really important, I think, to end on a smile and to end with a laugh, and you'll end up having much more restful sleep, I think, as a result. It's part of the body's natural healing process. So that's something I do all the time at home. At work, a few months ago, I made a change that was also really helpful, and that was by reorganizing my calendar, but not just my calendar, the calendar of the entire leadership of the company, and how that cascades through everybody else. So I now have my staff meeting, i.e. my leadership meeting with all my direct reports on Wednesday. And I have my one-on-ones with them on Tuesday. And I ask them to do their staff meetings, i.e. their functional group meetings on Tuesday, and to have their one-on-ones on Monday. And so what this creates is a very efficient cascade. Essentially, the individual contributors and the managers all meet together on Monday, discuss what's going on, is there anything urgent that needs to happen. Then their group discussions happen on Tuesday. Then it's my one-on-ones if something really urgent needs to be escalated to me, and then the leadership meets on Wednesday. And this cascade allows information to move very quickly through the company, and that's the thing you need to watch out for when the company is scaling, and allows us to react fast to anything that might be happening. And the other side effect of this is on Monday, Thursday, and Friday, I am essentially unscheduled, which gives me time to do deep work in any area that I need to.
It's fascinating. How many people are you now at the company?
We are about 43 people right now.
43. So you're scaling, and you're going to keep that kind of culture or strategy moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, it might mean that some people have to do their meetings over the weekend eventually. But they can do it on Friday.
So the next question is also kind of build on that, and we're going to move from personal more to a company. And when we were talking, Rahul, you mentioned kind of compounding performance increases. So increasing efficiencies 1% every month, and how at the end of the year or in 2 years, it's going to be actually a massive change. So have you been kind of, first of all, tracking, how are you increasing your company performance, company output, and have you been looking at it from a compounding perspective, 1% at a time, or kind of silver bullets here and there? If you want, we can start with you, Rahul, because we mentioned that.
Yeah, so this is another pre-post product market fit change. Once you're post product market fit, there's a mistake that some founders make, which is, okay, I've solved that problem. I want to go find the next shiny thing, the next really hard thing to solve and try and build a new product. That's almost always a mistake. Usually the right thing to do in a startup is when something is working, you keep doubling down upon it and optimizing it so it works even better, even faster, even harder. And what we're talking about is the magic of compounding performance. The actual numbers are, if you make something 1.3% better every single week, it actually compounds over the course of the year so that by the end of the year, you're twice as good as that thing. And that can be anything from closing engineering candidates or improving landing page conversion. If you were to go to somebody and ask them, hey, can you make this landing page convert better, just 1% a week, that's all you have to do. That's a pretty easy ask, right? There's probably something you can think of that will improve it by a meager 1%. Now, if you just do that every single week, by the end of the year, you've doubled conversion. Now imagine you're doing that across every single metric that matters, every single function in the business, at the end of the year, your company is doing everything twice as good. Now imagine you're doing that every single year, and you start to create an exponential business. So that's the magic of compounding performance.
What about you guys? Any compounding?
That's great, man. We don't do anything like that. I'm just kidding. No, I think I'm a math nerd, and the stat that you were giving, I saw it on some I think Instagram or something like that, where it's like 1.01 times to the power of 365 is like 37 or something. So like if you improve 1% every day, in a year from now, you will be 3,700% better. And if you regress by 1% every day, then you will be like really, really, really bad. So you can do the math, but it really stayed with me. And I think some of the things that Rahul talked about, we do at Affinity as well, perhaps not as in an organized fashion, but of course, like I think a part of scaling a company and scaling a company functionally is challenging your leaders to set aggressive goals, right? And there's lots of different goal setting frameworks that you can pick from. We use OKRs, and it works really well because you make it very clear that we are going to set stretch goals as a company every single month, every single quarter. They're not tied to your performance as an individual or a team, but let's be aspirational in where we need to get to. And what I've found is when you create a culture like that, people are very motivated to do their best work and actually, attempt to get to this uncomfortable, hard thing that they haven't done before. So every quarter we try to do something that we haven't done before, right? And it usually shows up in the numbers that he was talking about. So we do that as well, and I think that's worked out really well. I totally agree. I think post product market fit, you have to sort of at least for a couple of years or however the timeline ends up being till the departments are mature and you have super strong functional leaders, have to do that. So that the culture is in play. That's the biggest thing. Because cultural inertia is one of the biggest things that I've come to see, right? Like when you're 5 people, you can change how you act like very, very easily. When you are 100 people, it's very hard to do that. When you do this sort of OKR setting, aggressive goals every quarter, and once it's in motion, then the 101st person who joins is like, yep, this is just how this company works and that's how they do things. And that is very powerful.
We started using OKRs at Tribal Credit as of less than 2 months ago, and I can tell the difference. I can tell how much visibility we have to everything going on in the company and the speed and where the bottlenecks especially are. So it's really exciting to see once we hit that 100 employees, kind of mark how is that going to actually be different from other companies who did not use OKRs from the start. What about you, Niko?
I mean, this is one where VCs have it easy because we are in the business of trying to partner with founders like the two of you who think about that stuff all day long. And then we benefit from the compounding effect of the returns. So in venture capital, there are many paths to success. Sometimes we think we're so much better at the decision-making processes, but then we get lucky, from the outcomes, right? And everybody looks like a genius after the fact. You can rewrite history, and it's very believable. So for us, what matters a lot is, since we're also in the business of saying a lot of no's every single day, and that's part of how you can accumulate and build your reputation. So how can we touch a lot of different founders' lives, take a look into different businesses, and say no's really, really quickly, so increase the surface area? That's something, we're measuring. Because if you get to see a lot of stuff, say no to them very quickly, people are happy that they heard no and you're not dragging your feet, you can free up time to either focus on the 15 to 20 companies that get invested every year that return over 80% of the profits, and as well focus on your portfolio companies that you promise them that you're going to add value and help them build the category-defining business in their sector.
Right. What's interesting about you, Niko, and where you're placed is you need to have less internal meetings to be able to meet more founders, right? Basically, so how do you remove all that friction internally to maximize your output externally with the founders out there?
Yeah, great question. So obviously, like it starts with being part of a group of partners that you really respect each other. Every single one of them has the ability to source, evaluate, win opportunities. You work really well as a team. There are limited politics, because if you hate each other, you don't like each other's style, it's going to be very, very, very painful, and you will need to do all this annoying internal meetings to resolve your differences. And oh my God, sounds like a huge company already. So the key is to basically spend a day all together every week where you decide upon which companies to invest in, or what do you do in regards to pro rata participation, or solve any tricky challenges that you have with the portfolio, and then spend the rest of the week individually or as part of small teams bidding with companies. So if the ratio is not like that, clearly you're doing something wrong, or you're a contrarian VC in terms of how you organize yourself, so you'd better be right a few years later.
And you've been making more and more decisions, or more deals at least, across the time, once you start kind of figuring out your system internally more?
Yeah, absolutely. And it also has let us become truly a multi-stage investor. So at the end of the day, the number of decisions we make every year is about 80 investment decisions a year. 25 to 30 at the seed stage, 8 to 12 at the Series A, like 6 to 10 at the Series B, C stage, and then another, like 20 to 30, like meaningful pro rata participation. So it's not a crazy amount. It's like just a couple of weeks, but we need to free up time, to be able to choose the right ones.
Right. So the next question also came from a friend who really wanted to ask you this, and we talked about it a little. So you guys interact or hire or work with some of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley, and we all know here we see a lot of interesting trends, interesting hacks to kind of increase productivity. What are some of the more interesting things that got you excited, that you've seen friends around you or people around you doing to increase your productivity? Rahul, actually, I think you had a really interesting one. I'd love to start with that.
Sure. So this one's kind of silly, but it really does work. A friend of mine, some of you may know him, his name is Mike Gafaris. He's a VC at Canvas VC right now. He had this hack when he was an executive at Yelp, which if there was something that he was putting off that he really didn't want to do, he would ask his EA to sit with him, not necessarily to do the work, but just to watch him do it. Because he found that when he was being watched, there's actually a fairly well-documented effect. The performance effect kicked in, and he ended up doing it way better. And we've seen this actually in our onboarding. So for those who don't know, we onboard all of our customers one-to-one. There's a live 30-minute video call with one of our wonderful onboarding specialists, and every now and then we actually even do them in person. So I onboarded Ryan Peterson from Flexport in person a few months ago, and I remember him tweeting after the meeting, and it was a very flattering tweet, but he said, "There's nothing more effective than sitting down with a future billionaire to make you feel like you should be spending your time better." And he ended up getting through his email super fast and actually achieved inbox 0 in that onboarding. And he was joking, of course, but he was talking about the idea of, if you know you're wasting other people's time, most of us will actually use that time better. Or another way of saying the same thing, we undervalue our own time and we often overvalue other people's time. So if that's the case, if that's human psychology, why don't we create constructs so that we can leverage that to be more productive?
That's fascinating.
There is one that comes to mind, which I've stolen actually now. So one of my friends who's a founder of another company, he does this thing. He pointed out this very interesting thing to me, that is the cost of a recurring meeting. When you set up something that happens on a weekly, monthly, bi-weekly basis, someone set it up, and then most people forget about, why does this thing happen, and like, why is this weekly or why is this bi-weekly, and meetings are costly. So one of the things that he started doing was every quarter he would at the start of every quarter, he would auto-decline all recurring meetings. And he would then think from first principles, which one of these makes sense and which one of these doesn't, and realize that he actually saves a quarter of his time because some of the meetings were just legacy things that someone had set up because something was important at some point 8 months ago that is no longer relevant. But people just keep meeting because, again, inertia of change of recurring meetings, especially when a founder sets it up or something like that. So I started doing that every quarter. Day one, just auto-decline all meetings, and then it's like, okay, cool, which ones do we really need?
Awesome. Niko.
Sure. So like Paul Graham said a long time ago, you're either a builder or a manager, and your calendar reflects that. So if you're like somebody who's on the manager side, you have a lot of meetings. So the best thing I've seen and I've adopted is like for first meetings, make them really, really short, like a 15-minute phone call. And this could like free up so much freaking time. Do the same thing, like every quarter, decline all the recurring ones. And if you realize that nothing, materially impacted your workflow, that's great news. And then always be grateful when somebody cancels on you because it's found time out of nowhere.
That's great. So the last kind of part of the conversation is going to be more about the products. Rahul, you're building a product that increases email efficiency by 2x. Shubham, you're building really a network mapping system that we just heard one of your customers out there, a big venture fund, saying you've increased our productivity by 10x. Just going in, which was a nice quote for us to handle.
What about the returns? I'm curious.
Returns? Okay, I'm being told we're out of time. So before we go, Rahul generously offered, if anyone here wants to use Superhuman, they can cut the wait list of 200,000 people. I think that makes us feel very special. So if anyone wants to do that, please reach out to me, and I'll kind of put together a list to send it to him. So a round of applause for our speakers, and please.